Welcome to the Broncos podcast with Troy Renck. I am your host, Troy Renck from the Denver Post. Broncos season is sadly over, but that's not necessarily a surprise. They were a huge underdog in Buffalo, and as I've told you all, there's still a huge advantage to getting playoff experience. It was the first step. Many players told me that in the locker room in Buffalo. First step. We're not satisfied. We're going to learn from this. One thing you learn is you like to have home playoff games, or you like to avoid playing in Buffalo. That's not one of the best places to play, and you can't play from behind. After 7-0 lead, the Broncos gave up 31 straight points. But there's things from this season that we should be encouraged about, and one of them remains Bo Nix. What's next for Bo Nix? Well, for me, it's big things. You can read my column in the Denver Post, but I'm pushing all my chips to the center of the table with this on Bo Nix, and we're going to talk about that. Obviously, this roster, there's ground to cover. Some of the flaws were laid bare against a team like Buffalo, which only has the one All-Pro in Josh Allen, but they showed you at other spots in their roster why they're a better team than the Broncos. And you look at what are some of the Broncos' needs, and even one of those is on defense, and I think it's a sneaky need, but we're going to get into that as well. But the Broncos finished their season 10-8. The curse, the drought of losing seasons finally over. That 7-year losing streak over. The playoff drought, 8-year playoff drought. That was the second longest playoff drought to the Jets. Now, finally, over. So good things that way. But now the next step. Can the Broncos win a playoff game? They haven't won a playoff game now since 2015. Sean Payton himself has not won a playoff game since 2020. So the next step is critical. They've reached in. They've got into the dance. They got under the velvet rope. What are the keys now to becoming a legitimate Super Bowl contender? Because I do think this team has a chance to be that as early, you hear me right, as early as next season. We're going to get to all of that after the break. Have you been injured in a car wreck or hurt at work? What are you waiting for? Give my friends at Hoggett Injury Law a call. Their motto, with us, it's personal. That's because it is. I've known Darby Hoggett forever. He's the one that encouraged me to do this Broncos podcast. In fact, he took his son and a couple of his friends to Buffalo for the game. That's how much of a diehard Broncos fan Darby is. I became good friends with Darby. Many of his clients become his good friend. You don't even have to pay Darby up front. If your case goes as planned, Darby will be the one writing checks to you. So again, if you've been injured in a car wreck or hurt at work, give Darby's team a call. That's 1-833-HOGGATT. That's 1-833-HOGGET, or visit the website at hoggettlaw.com. BetOnline continues to be the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting. From the earliest odds to in-game live betting, BetOnline provides you with all the action and the ability to watch the games as they happen. They have the largest selection of odds on everything from football, the NBA, college hoops, NHL, even UFC. So head to BetOnline today, and don't forget, use your promo code. That's BELIEVE, BLEAV, BLEAV for your welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, the game starts here. Well, the games are over for the Broncos at this point. Welcome back. I'm Troy Renck from the Denver Post. They were knocked out in the elimination round known as the NFL playoffs. Honestly, the bar was set low for wildcard teams. There wasn't one good game other than Washington beating Tampa Bay, and the Jaden Daniels legacy continues to be strengthened. He was my guy coming out. The Broncos were never going to get him, so I'm not going to spend time on that. But all other wildcard teams had poor showings. From the Chargers, that was probably the most surprising. Justin Herbert having more interceptions in one game than he had all season. The Steelers offense under Russell Wilson casting his future in doubt there. They end the season on just a horrible losing streak and look in offensively. The Packers, same struggles against the Eagles, and of course the Broncos and Bills. The Broncos, Troy Franklin, touchdown pass, 7-0. That literally came into my lap in the press box where I was seated. I'm like, man, okay, they got a chance. That's how you take the crowd out of it. You take, you throw a punch, you throw a haymaker. Unfortunately, that was the highlight of the game for the Broncos. They had 154 yards offense after the opening 70-yard drive. They did basically nothing from the second quarter on. But strangely enough, they were in it. If Will Lutz doesn't clank a 50-yarder, it's 10-10 at half. But you go into half 10-7. You have a chance. We talked about that on the pod, that you hang around, you're the ugly guy in the fight, make the other, the favorite feel a little nervous, a little anxious. Well, the game turned on one play, and it's not why they lost, but certainly the momentum swung. 13-7, 3 minutes, a little over 3 minutes left in the third quarter. The Bills face a 4th and 1, like right on their 21-yard line. For whatever reason, they don't call a quarterback sneak or a quarterback power or a quarterback run. So right when I see Josh Allen passing on that, I'm like, wow, that is a stupid play call by the Bills, just given about 100% certainty Josh Allen would have gotten a first down if he runs the ball. And here he is running around. He ends up to his right, and he throws a pass into the back of the end zone. I'm going to be honest, I don't think it was a catch. I've seen more egregious, but everyone shows on social media the photo of, look, see, he's in the end zone. He's got a knee down. Yeah, that's a stop photo. He didn't have control of the ball. That's my point. If you watch the video of that, he didn't have control of the ball when he's sliding. That knee was down, but he didn't have possession for me. And honestly, it's like that. Sean Jotar and I were talking about this yesterday. It's like that Saturday Night Live skit with the comedian. It's like, what is a catch? None of us know what a catch is anymore. It's like, well, if he has 2 feet down, if he has possession, if he's able to text as he's going out of bounds, if he's able to wave and signal he's okay, nobody knows what a catch is anymore. That's part of the issue. I've seen things way different called non-catch. And that's my second issue with NFL replay. I don't understand why they can't just see the play in a vacuum instead of saying it has to have overwhelming evidence to overturn, because that then creates an inherent bias. You're leading the witness. You're basically favoring your officials. And I know why they do, because the officials are so sensitive to criticism. They're babies about everything. They're egotistical. They're out of shape. They should be full-time employees, and they're not. My criticism of NFL officials has been going on for years, so don't think it's isolated to this play. But the reality is they should see it in a vacuum. Is it a catch or is it not? Not what was it called on the field. Watch the video in a vacuum. Was it a catch? They rule it a catch. So instead of being 13-7, Broncos ball, 3:05 left in the third quarter, the Broncos now, after a 2-point conversion by the Bills, are down 21-7 with 3 minutes left in the third. Game over. Game over at that point. You're not going to overcome a double-digit deficit, in the playoffs on the road at Buffalo. So the Broncos lose. And that's disappointing. You wanted them to be in the end of that game and into the fourth quarter. They weren't. So what did that game tell us about their future? Well, I want to start with the big headline. Let's not confuse it. What's next for Bo Nix? Because when you look at this team, the Broncos are only going to go as far as Bo Nix can take them, which in the past, if I had told you about a Broncos quarterback since Peyton Manning retired, you would literally at this point pause and put your hands over your face to hide your tears. Because beyond the uncertainty was just the complete ineffectiveness and ineptitude. Other than when they got Russell Wilson leading into his first year, there hasn't been this much optimism going into next season about the quarterback. Russell bombed. We know that in his first season. And so the following year, there wasn't a lot of optimism. This is the first time since Russell, when they was acquired, that you will go into 2025 feeling good about the quarterback position, as you should. Bo Nix, folks, had one of the best rookie seasons by a quarterback in NFL history. I'm not saying he's one of the best quarterbacks in NFL history. Don't confuse it. But the reality is he had one of the best rookie seasons, and he certainly had the best rookie season ever by a Broncos quarterback. That isn't even up for debate. But he leads them to the playoffs, first since John Elway in 83. And John Elway was not good in 83, folks. He was benched multiple times, playing behind Steve DeBerg, had like 4 touchdowns, 6 picks. He wasn't very good. Tim Tebow, he did his damage that next year, not as a rookie. And Tim Tebow still remains the only drafted Broncos quarterback with a playoff win. The crazy stat. And he did that, obviously, we know, the walk-off to Demaryius Thomas. But when you look at Bo Nix, what he did over those final 12 games, counting the playoff game, 25 touchdowns, 8 picks, 69% completion percentage. Folks, you can win with that. You can win with that. And it's not just about those raw stats, but that tells you how well he played. And really, it goes back after the first 4 games. He was one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL in terms of efficiency, touchdown to pick ratio, those kind of things. The baseline things you look for. So when we talk about what's next and why it's so encouraging, well, let's talk about what we know about the player. We saw a guy who can be efficient, who doesn't take sacks, who plays on schedule, who gives his team a chance. And statistically, he's sound. He's not a superstar. We're not saying that, but he's very sound, very encouraging what you saw statistically. What you know about the person, for me, is even more encouraging. He's a leader. He's a fiery competitor, which is what they'll tell you inside the building. Absolutely hates to lose. And he's a tough guy. He admitted Monday he played through 3 transverse process fractures in his back. So when you talk about being a tough guy, then, hey, that's part of it. That's part of it. And now, again, that's not an uncommon injury, but it's not common, if that makes sense. And the fact that he never missed time, never missed a snap outside of when they were absolutely routing the Chiefs at the end of the season, that says a lot about him. It says he understands the importance of his position, of being on the field, of being available, and playing through pain, which almost every NFL player does, certainly at some point during the season. And he played effectively. That's the other hard part, is you can play through pain. Can you play effectively through it? I do think, too, it shows why they didn't run the ball as much with Nix over about a month's time following the Raiders game. That is when he originally hurt it. And I think that's when you will find that his run stats went down. But what's next for Nix? Well, here, we talked to Davis Webb last week. Nix gets it, okay? He embraces the responsibility of the job. He initially earned his teammates' respect this year as he's competing for that starting spot through his work ethic. And then he did it through performance. That's what the NFL is about. Don't be about it. Don't talk about it, be about it. And he was about it. And really turned heads in that Packers scrimmage in August, where, like, hey, we got a guy here. But now he has a chance to exhale. A regular off season, because one of the hard parts for guys coming into the league, and especially guys who are on big time college football teams, as Nix was at Oregon, you play an extremely long season, go into the bowl game, and then you go right into the training for the combine. You do all these private workouts. You go to the combine, you do more workouts, you go to the draft, and go right to OTAs like 2 weeks after the draft, a week after the draft. There's never really a chance to catch your breath. And you throw in, he was fighting for the starting job. So right when he gets into this marathon, the longest marathon season of his life, the pressure never lets up. And he's equipped to handle it. He's shown that. But my point is, now he goes into the off season with completely different situation. He knows he's the starter. Everyone in Broncos country, while there's some still critics who worry and whine about his ceiling, he knows he's the starter, and he can focus on the nuances of the position. As he said Monday during locker room cleanout, the locker cleanout, I enjoy film study, the self-scouting, the stuff. Now I can jump ahead on next year, trying to be a little more ahead now that I know what to expect. That's a big deal. It's just like if you're in a class and you're taking a foreign language, now you're in French too. It's easier in some ways because you know how to conjugate the verbs. You know the basic principles. Part of the problem when the Denver has struggled with quarterbacks is when you change the coordinator and coach every other year, it's literally saying, okay, learn French, learn German, learn Spanish, and you're constantly starting over. Nix is starting in level 2 now, and now he's going into the honors class, if you will. We talked to quarterbacks coach Davis Webb, my partner in crime at the Denver Post, Peter Gabriel. That's what I always call him because of the rock star. Parker Gabriel passed this along to me, and it's Webb has told Nix he's going to present him with a 5-page sheet on what he needs to work on for the offseason to be ready for OTAs. But he has suggested, don't take it all in one night, Bo. Relax. You got time now. Enjoy, excel. He said, hey, go to an Avs game, relax a little bit. The fact that Webb is worried about Nix throttling back drives home why Nix future remains so bright. He's ready to improve, folks. And there's areas where he has to. I'm the first to say that. As much as I'm pushing all my chips in on Nix because of the partnership with Sean Payton, and it has the asterisk, they've got to add weapons around him. We know that. We're going to get to that. But Nix gets it, and now he's got an offseason to address issues that need to improve. It starts with pushing the ball downfield. According to Next Gen Stats, he ranked 23rd in air yards per attempt at 7.7, 26th in tight window throws at 13.1%. Payton, and by proxy Nix, fell in love at times with the horizontal attack, throwing balls to the tunnel screens, everything at the line of scrimmage. That's fine to get him in rhythm a little bit, but growth for Nix requires using the middle of the field and pushing the ball downfield with authority. Obviously, getting a tight end would help. Signing a T. Higgins would help. And I do think they're going to add. I think we all understand they're going to add at least one of those pieces. The tight window metric explains that Nix wasn't forcing the ball, not a bad thing, but as he matures with his timing and his mechanics, I think you're going to see how he throws more guys open. And he's going to see from his film that when his feet aren't wrong, a lot of right happens. When he's not bouncing around and he's got a firm base, even if he throws off balance, even if he drops his arm angle, if his feet are right, a lot of things stop going wrong immediately. And so he understands it. But remember, this is the guy who was making good decisions. Again, 26 sacks in 18 games. It's a very efficient number. So we can see now where with better weapons, a tight end, a second receiver to pair with Courtland Sutton, this is a guy who can take a step forward. What if he gets to 35 touchdowns, 10 picks, and rushes for 500 yards? That is the final piece of that. And then I want to get to a bite from Courtland Sutton. But the final piece of Nix improving with health and understanding that he had this back issue, if they're going to take the next step, they need to use him as a more dynamic force offensively. Sean Payton admitted during the season, early in the year, he was surprised at Nix's athleticism, specifically how fast he was. Nix didn't run at the combine. Nix didn't run at his private workouts. He was adamant after his time was done at Oregon, I'm not going to be running. I want you to all see me as a passing quarterback. I think he didn't want any shades of Auburn attached to him. But the reality is he can run. He does run well, and he doesn't really put himself in harm's way when he does run. He slides, and he gets out of bounds. This is a guy who ran 22 miles per hour on one run this season. If I had to guess, if he had a pro day at Oregon, I bet he runs a 4.59, 4.62, somewhere in that range. And so it comes back to my point of when you see how dynamic a Josh Allen is or Lamar Jackson, and one of those two will win MVP, I still think it's Lamar Jackson, but it could easily be Allen. The ability to run is part of it. Bo Nix is not going to be those two, but there has to be shades of Allen and Lamar Jackson in his game. They need to have design runs for him, not him just scrambling around. If you get Nix healthy as a dual threat, where he can have 45, 50 yards rushing, not leading the team in rushing as he did this year. 6 times he did that. That's a joke. And we're going to address that because that's obviously another position of need is running back. But if he gets to the point where he can run for 40, 50 yards a game and you're throwing for 220, that is a guy who's a top 12, top 15 quarterback. And you can get to the Final Four in the AFC with that. It's winning one more game, folks, than they won this year in terms of the playoffs. When I wrote today, they can be a Super Bowl contender. You get to the Final Four, anything can happen. Do I expect the Texans to beat the Chiefs? I do not. But anything can happen at that point. You look at Bills versus Ravens. How many times have we said the Bills are a lock to move on and they get upset? So you get to the Final Four, now you're in my mind, at the Final Four in your conference, you are a Super Bowl contender. If you want to say it's just a conference championship game, that's a different bar. I would say that if you get to the Final Four in your conference, you at that point are a Super Bowl contender. And the Broncos have a chance to take that next step. And Bo Nix does. Listen now, and Big A's behind the screen here. Listen to what Courtland Sutton said when I talked to him about expectations moving forward for this franchise and how much that is connected to Bo Nix. Here is Courtland Sutton.
It's now, the Denver Broncos, must be a playoff team. That now becomes where our mindset is, and it's no longer we need to break the curse. We need to break the curse. It's not like we have a really good team, we have really good players, and we did a lot with less. Hearing guys talk about the whole cap situation, I wasn't too much aware of it. I've heard people talk about it, but you look at the situation that we had, and you look at, all the different chips that were put against us, and we came out and performed. We had, like I said, we have a really good locker room, and I think the standard has been set, and I looking forward to going into this offseason to see, where this team continues to go. I think that there's a lot of promise for what we have and what's to come.
How much does it help to know you have certainty at quarterback moving forward?
Oh, shoot. That's a no-brainer. I think you can answer that question for me. I feel like weekly about, how proud I am of Bo and how he has grown, week in and week out. He's grown and showed up week in and week out of who he is, and the potential that's there. And to be able to go into an offseason not having that question mark of who's going to be throwing me the ball next year, it's a really good feeling. I think it plays into kind of the earlier question of the guys in his locker room, and going into this offseason, what's the idea, what's the mojo. And I think that us having our franchise quarterback, us having Bo Nix as our guy, I think it gives us a lot of confidence moving forward into this offseason and going into next year that this team has potential to have a lot of success, a lot of further success.
Yeah, again, that was Courtland Sutton. If you're just joining this part of the pod, it's Troy Renck from the Denver Post. That was Courtland Sutton. When I talked to him in the locker room after the loss to Buffalo, he had talked about, hey, they've set the standard now. It's playoffs or bust going forward. That's number one. And two, you got certainty at quarterback. And that has just been such an issue hanging over this team for the last 8 years. Now they don't have to worry about that. And not only do you have a guy, but you have a guy who gets it. Again, that was my point in the whole monologue here about Bo Nix. He knows what he's not good at. He's got a whole offseason now to prepare to get better. And then and there's no reason to think he won't. The guy is obsessed with it. He's a coach's son. This is what he does. Now, he's got life beyond football. Don't confuse it. But he understands that the next level of this is the obsession with the grind, the film study, the nuances of the position. But then, as much as I say, and I write today in the Denver Post, Bo can make them a Super Bowl contender. It comes with the asterisk that the organization has to help him. He needs help. And that's our headline here. Playmakers needed. If you watch that game, it's very clear in spots why Buffalo is better than Denver. Beyond Josh Allen. Josh Allen's better than Bo Nix. We're not debating that. But the reason Buffalo is better is because they're better at specific positions. And so when you look at the Broncos, folks, it starts number one at tight end. You look at the Bills, they got two. They're using the Noah's Ark philosophy. Why have one when you can have two? They have Dalton Kincaid, and they got Dawson Knox. The Broncos have Lucas Kroll and Adam Troutman, Nate Atkins, Greg Dulcich's hair, and then the ghost of Riley Odoms. What are we doing at tight end? Like, at some point, folks, you got to help the kid at tight end. If you watch how the Ravens play with Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely, it's just such an easy play where they do an RPO on first down. He just fakes it. Boom, there's the tight end, sets in the zone, 8-yard gain. Now we're at 2nd and 2. Like, to have the tight end to be able to use the middle of the field would be so advantageous to Bo Nix's growth. And I think it's very obvious that it is going to be addressed in the offseason. Sean Payton's a smart guy. He can be stubborn. We know that. But there's no way you could come away looking at this roster over the last 3 years, frankly, but certainly last 2, and think that they don't need help at tight end. They absolutely do. So is that Penn State's Tyler Warren? You're going to hear his name repeated a million times over the next few months leading into the draft. He is just a hybrid guy who's been compared to Dallas Clark former Pro Bowler that played with Peyton Manning in Indianapolis. He's a more versatile version of Clark athletically. Now, can he do it at the next level? But every time I've watched Tyler Warren, I've become away impressed. You got the Colston Loveland kid from Michigan. You like him because he can be an inline guy who can block. Harold Fanning Jr., smaller school guy, I think Bowling Green guy. Mason Taylor. Pick a tight end. It is a great tight end draft. The Broncos have to come away with a tight end. You watch what Sean Payton's offenses look like when he had Jimmy Graham, Jeremy Shockey. Like, that is when it reaches its full potential. Number one need this offseason for me is a pass-catching tight end. He's got to be a functional blocker, but they've got to have a pass-catching tight end. And it's likely going to come from the draft because the draft's loaded. And for everyone that keeps telling me they have no chance at Tyler Warren, people that forecast and predict the draft and do it for a living have him going between 20th and 30th, as good as he was this last year. The Broncos draft 20th, folks. They're going to have a chance at Warren. Now, would I think they would trade up for him? I don't, because they just can't sacrifice picks anymore. They're still dealing with a $33 million cap hit from Russell Wilson this coming season. Some of that will be addressed by the increase in the cap, but they're still dealing with a 33, which is way better than the 52 they had this year. They had right at 91 million in dead cap. That number is going to come down significantly. You get the cap increase, so they're in a much better position. But tight end is a position. A receiver to pair with Courtland Sutton. And you say, Troy, aren't you the one that you love the potential of Troy Franklin and Devon Bailey? I do. But as you get better, folks, you add competition to the room. So if you go out and get a T. Higgins or you go out and get a veteran receiver, then it forces Bailey and Franklin to make the team. I mean, how much better are you when they're fighting to make the team, not guaranteed spots? Because Marvin Mims will be back. He's a Pro Bowl, All-Pro returner, and he's got a niche role in the offense now. But if you can add a clear one, which would be Higgins, or another kind of true two to pair with Sutton, you got something now. Because Sutton's a nice piece, but I think people in Denver misconstrue his value because the offense has been so bad prior to the last couple years. He's a really nice player. He's not Justin Jefferson. He's not Tyreek Hill. He's not Jamar Chase. He's not he's not Puka. He's not, what if let's say you had a chance for Cooper Kupp in the offseason? What if you had that chance? That kind of play. That's what so you can't get a true one in T. Higgins, but maybe you could go get Kupp. And that's just a hypothetical. There's nothing to that. I'm just saying. Now you have Sutton and Kupp, and then the other guys fighting for crumbs. That's a good position to be in. They need a second receiver for Bo Nix. The reason they need a tight end is because the tight end is to a quarterback what the blanket is to Linus in Snoopy. It is a security blanket that would help Nix tremendously, especially on third down, to have a good tight end. The final piece, and Sean Keeler and I debated this in the Denver Post. You could argue this is number one. I don't, because I just don't see Sean Payton ever running the football significantly. He loves to pass. He loves to use the short passing game as his run game. But folks, what in the HEL double hockey sticks? Audric Estime was inactive at Buffalo. My God, I've been pushing for him to get more carries, and he gets zero because he's not even active. To not have him active in a 30-degree windy day in Buffalo, I didn't like it. I still don't like it, and it looked worse in the outcome because they only ran 42 plays. Their time of possession was one of the lowest since like 1983. They weren't on the field, and you can blame the defense, but part of the reason the defense was terrible is because the offense kept going 3 and out. The 2 drop third down passes by Franklin and Courtland Sutton really hurt early when they were still in the game. But they had these big plans for Tyler Bidet. He gets 2 carries. I'm like, oh my God, it's 30 degrees out. Run the kid, the power back. Anyway, my point is this. Maybe you look at the kid Hampton from UNC in the draft. You look there, for me, they're going to draft a running back to come in and compete for the starting job with Estime and possibly Bidet. Javonte Williams, we love him. I can't see him coming back in any scenario at this point. I think he's going to, and I wish nothing but the best for him. Fantastic person. He was a good player for a few years, even better person. But you bring in a Hampton, you draft a kid from Iowa. I mean, obviously, Gentry would be amazing. I think we all believe that the Cowboys are going to take Gentry in the draft. But if for some reason he was available, maybe you hit on that. It would be unusual to take a running back in the first round. But if Gentry was sitting there at 20, I mean, I'm not gonna have a huge problem with that because there's enough tight ends in the draft. You could get one in the second round, but they need a running back. They need a bell cow back. Stop with the 3 and 4 guys already. I mean, it's like we're doing the show, The Bachelor here. Like, oh, I can't choose between any of them, so I got 4 of them. No. Pick one, and then another one gets a secondary role to spell him, and then you've got Jaleel McLaughlin as an X-back or whatever, but you can't have 3 and 4 guys. No way. And I think this year drove that point home. So when you talk about playmakers on offense, for me, it starts with tight end because they're a passing team. If you want to argue it's running back, I'm not going to go crazy about it, but they don't really run the ball like that. Maybe they would if they had the right running back, but they need a tight end. They need to draft a running back that comes in and competes with Estime and or to Tyler Bidet for the starting job. And they need to find a second receiver, whether that's T. Higgins, someone in the vein, not him, but of a Cooper Kupp, a veteran receiver to pair with Courtland Sutton. Because, who knows with Sutton? He might try to hold out and get more money. Now you're going into the offseason like wondering, is he going to be back? If he wants real money, I'm talking top of the line, $25 million, I can't see them paying that. They barely hedged to give him incentives off his current deal. So that's something to keep an eye on. And another reason why I think they need to add a receiver to cover themselves. But those are the positions of need offensively. Tight end, running back, receiver. Order them how you choose. Talk among yourselves. And finally, we'll conclude with this. It's not just on offense. If that Bills game showed us one thing, beyond how James Cook was better as a running back than anybody the Broncos had, did you see Matt Milano, an inside linebacker for the Bills? The ability to make plays in space, to play sideline to sideline. That is what the Broncos need from that position. They haven't had it, frankly, since Danny Trevathan in the Super Bowl season. The guy who can play sideline to sideline, who can cover running backs on wheel routes and underneath routes, and who's just a supreme tackler. Cody Barton's had a nice year. Justice Turnot, I'm proud of that guy, given where he's come from as a special teams guy. Missed his whole rookie year, but they need an upgrade at that position for me. Both those guys could be part of the mix. Maybe one of them's a backup, the other's on special teams, but they need an every down linebacker who can work in space, and they're hard to find. They are, but you got to look in the draft for that. You got to look at maybe somebody that is not playing on another team that you think projects that. Maybe you could trade for, but they've got to get better at inside linebacker. Some would argue at safety as well with PJ Locke, someone to challenge PJ Locke. But for me, the core of this defense looks great. Where they are at cornerback, where they are, that they could lose DJ Jones. When I talked to him on Sunday, he definitely wants to come back because of the culture and way the arrows pointed up. So you might need a nose tackle. You got Zach Allen, you got Nick Bonito, you got Pat Surtain, 3 all-pro players. You got Riley Moss as the second corner to Surtain. You've got Brandon Jones at safety doing damage. So, and Locke paired with him has been decent, but they need an upgrade, folks, at inside linebacker. Someone who can run sideline to sideline like Matt Milano did. And there are not a lot of them, but they need to identify and prioritize that position. So as I sit here and say what's next for Bo Nix and why I think they can be a Super Bowl contender, it does come with the asterisk. They got to help him. You got to address 3 needs on offense: tight end, running back, receiver. You've got to add an inside linebacker. Then you go into the next season with the confidence, what it looks like to reach the playoffs, the knowledge of what it looks like and how you have to play in the playoffs to win, and the understanding that, hey, now we're here, we're on the stage. Now it's about showing it, not the underdog story anymore. Now it's about living with expectations, where they say the standard is now the standard. The standard is playoffs or bust. You got your quarterback. That is a great place to be going into this offseason, but they got work to do. And I think I'm bullish on this team because they have clear needs, pretty clear path to addressing them. They're out of, for the most part, salary cap hell. They've eliminated all the curses. It's a good time, Broncos country, to be a fan of this team, because I see them over the next 4 or 5 years in a really good position to compete and contend for a Super Bowl. Folks, I hope you enjoyed it. This pod would not be possible without the great folks at Mile High Sports. That starts with Nate Lundy and Big A behind the screen, the producer. And of course, Bet Online. I appreciate their sponsorship, and my A1 from day one, Darby Hoggett, who was at the game, freezing in Buffalo. Broncos country, I do this pod for you. Happiness that begins with me. Go out there and have a great day.